The fluorescent lights flickered faintly overhead as Karen stormed into the crowded grocery store, her heels clicking sharply on the linoleum floor. The midday rush buzzed around her. Families, elderly shoppers, young couples, all suddenly overshadowed by the storm she carried with her. No one in the aisle was immune to her sharp gaze. No one could escape her biting tone. "Excuse me, move out of my way," she barked at a mother who had paused to pick a can off a high shelf. The woman flinched, apologizing quietly, but Karen pressed on, her voice rising. "This is ridiculous. There are lines for a reason. You think you're the only person here?" She spun abruptly toward a store employee stacking boxes nearby. "And you? Why aren't you helping? Do you even care about your job?" The employee's face tightened with discomfort. Customers glanced away, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. Karen's bossy demeanor dominated the space, a storm brewing amid the aisles of canned goods and produce. A young man at the checkout whispered to the cashier, "Maybe we should call security." The cashier nodded, dialing the store's front desk. Moments later, the dull hum of a police radio crackled as the store manager explained the situation. An aggressive customer causing distress, refusing to calm down. Within minutes, Officer James Mitchell arrived. Tall and calm, he walked steadily through the automatic doors, his badge gleaming under the harsh lights. He surveyed the scene with practiced eyes, noting the tension hanging thick in the air. Karen, spotting him, straightened immediately. Her voice sharpened. "Finally, some order here. Maybe you can make these people follow the rules." Officer Mitchell stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "Ma'am, I'm here to help. Let's talk for a moment." Karen's eyes narrowed, measuring him. Her bossiness wavered just a bit under his steady gaze. Something about his presence demanded respect, whether she wanted to give it or not. Around them, the store's noise faded, the spotlight narrowing on this sudden confrontation. Then, unexpectedly, the officer's tone shifted, slightly colder, more authoritative, as he told Karen to step aside. She hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. The atmosphere shifted, the balance of power subtly tipping. A bystander nearby raised a phone, starting to record. The scene was about to change in ways no one expected. Officer James Mitchell's footsteps were steady as he moved closer to Karen, his voice calm but deliberate. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside so we can talk privately, please." His eyes searched hers, unflinching. Karen's lips curled into a smirk, but her usual fiery confidence flickered. "Step aside? You think you can tell me what to do? I'm a customer here, and I have rights." The crowd around them held its breath, the murmurs swelling as some shoppers pulled out their phones. Among them, a young bystander angled his device to capture the unfolding scene. Mitchell remained composed, voice steady. "I'm here to make sure everyone stays safe and calm. We can sort this out together, but I need your cooperation." Karen folded her arms, her posture stiffening. She launched into a tirade, demanding explanations, accusing the store staff of incompetence, and questioning the officer's authority. Yet beneath the bluster, a subtle unease crept in. The officer listened, his face an unreadable mask. Then, without warning, he reached into his utility belt and grabbed a notebook. "I'm going to have to ask for your ID," he said quietly. Karen's eyes flashed with indignation. "You can't do that without a reason." "I'm asking." "Because you've been causing a disturbance," Mitchell replied firmly. "If you cooperate, this will be quick." Karen's voice cracked as she refused, and tensions escalated. The bystander's camera zoomed in, capturing the exchange in real time. Suddenly, Mitchell's tone hardened. "Step back, ma'am." What followed was a flash of movement, a shove from the officer, Karen stumbling back, shouting accusations of excessive force. The crowd erupted into murmurs and gasps. Some rushed to intervene, others shouted at the officer. Karen's voice was sharp, accusing him of abuse of power. The officer's demeanor shifted, his grip tightening on Karen's arm, his words clipped and authoritative. "You're under control now. Stop resisting." The bystander's phone recorded every second. Karen's protests, the officer's forceful commands, the mounting chaos. In the aftermath, Whispers rippled through the crowd. Had the officer gone too far? Was Karen's behavior provoking? Or had she been unfairly targeted? The lines blurred between right and wrong. Karen, once bossy and overbearing, now found herself vulnerable and restrained. The power dynamic had shifted dramatically, and as police radios crackled in the background, more officers arrived, the situation escalating. The bystanders' recording instantly began circulating online, shared rapidly across social media platforms, fueling heated debates about police conduct and civilian rights. Officer Mitchell stood silent amid the crowd's uproar, the weight of the moment settling heavily on him. But was he justified, or had he crossed a line? As Karen was escorted to the patrol car, her defiance was replaced by confusion and fear. Questions burned. Would justice prevail? Would this incident be just another statistic or the spark for something greater? The answer was still out there, waiting to be revealed. The moment the bystanders' video hit social media, it exploded. Across platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, sparking waves of reactions nationwide. People watched as Karen's aggressive words gave way to confusion and fear under Officer Mitchell's forceful grip. The footage was raw and unfiltered, showing a side of police encounters many recognized, but few dared to document so openly. Within hours, hashtags like "Gaining Justice for Karen" and "Buying Police Accountability" trended. Supporters of Karen argued that her entitled behavior did not justify the officer's rough treatment. Others pointed out that law enforcement's use of force had crossed a troubling line, reigniting debates about systemic misconduct. News outlets picked up the story. Talk shows dissected the video frame by frame. Civil rights organizations released statements demanding thorough investigations, emphasizing the need for accountability and reform in policing practices. The incident became more than a local disturbance. It was a national conversation about power, respect, and justice. Karen herself was overwhelmed by the sudden spotlight. She had never imagined her moment of frustration in a grocery store would spark such a firestorm. In interviews, she described feeling humiliated and powerless in the face of the officer's authority, admitting that her initial bossiness masked deeper frustrations she rarely expressed. Meanwhile, communities across the country resonated with the story, not because of Karen's entitlement, but because it mirrored countless encounters where ordinary citizens felt caught between asserting their rights and fearing the repercussions. The video also sparked new awareness about the importance of civilian recordings in holding law enforcement accountable. The public recognized the power of technology in bringing hidden moments into daylight, demanding transparency. However, the viral nature of the footage also exposed Karen to harsh criticism. Some labeled her a Karen stereotype, dismissing her as entitled and difficult, while others sympathized with her vulnerability and courage in speaking out. The story grew increasingly complex, reflecting the nuanced realities of policing and public interaction. Protests began in Karen's hometown, initially peaceful gatherings calling for justice and better police training. Signs with messages like, "Respect all lives and end police brutality" filled the streets. Diverse groups, activists, students, families, came together, united in their demand for change. At the same time, local law enforcement faced mounting pressure. Community leaders demanded a full review of the incident and a transparent investigation into Officer Mitchell's conduct. The police department responded by promising cooperation, but trust had been shaken. As tensions simmered, both sides grappled with uncertainty. The line between protest and unrest was thin, and every new development was watched closely by a nation increasingly aware of the delicate balance between authority and civil rights. Karen found herself at a crossroads, no longer just a figure of annoyance but an unwilling symbol in a larger movement questioning how power was exercised and abused. Behind closed doors, Karen wrestled with her feelings. Was she a victim of police misconduct? Had her own behavior contributed? Could her story help push for real reform? Or was it destined to become another flashpoint in a fractured society? As the community braced for the upcoming investigation and public hearings, the question loomed: could this incident be a turning point for accountability? Or would it fade into the shadows of forgotten cases? The answer lay ahead, buried in the complex dance of justice and resistance. The local police department moved quickly once the public outcry reached a fever pitch. An internal affairs investigation was launched to examine Officer Mitchell's actions during the confrontation with Karen. Cameras, witness statements, and the viral video were meticulously reviewed, each frame scrutinized for any sign of misconduct or excessive force. Officer Mitchell was placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the inquiry. For him, the situation was both a professional crisis and a personal reckoning. He had entered the force to serve and protect, but now he faced allegations that could end his career. Karen, meanwhile, grappled with a complicated mix of emotions: anger, relief, and a cautious hope that justice might finally be served. Her initial frustration, which had spiraled into a public spectacle, had transformed her into an unlikely advocate for police reform. The investigation was thorough, revealing a troubling pattern. Though the department acknowledged the chaotic nature of the incident, evidence suggested Officer Mitchell had overstepped protocols, escalating what could have been a de-escalated encounter into a physical confrontation. Community leaders and activists demanded that charges be filed, viewing this as an opportunity to hold law enforcement accountable and push for systemic change. They emphasized the need for better training, transparency, and a culture shift within police departments nationwide. As the case moved into the courtroom, the trial became a focal point for a divided community. The prosecution painted a picture of an officer who had abused his power, disregarding Karen's rights and safety. The defense argued that Officer Mitchell acted within his authority, responding to a disruptive individual who had refused to comply with lawful orders. Karen took the stand, recounting the incident with raw emotion. Her testimony revealed not just her personal ordeal, but the broader fears many citizens felt when confronting authority figures. She spoke candidly about how her entitled demeanor had masked deeper anxieties, about being heard, respected, and safe. The courtroom was packed for every hearing, with reporters, activists, and locals eager for justice. Outside, rallies and vigils continued, underscoring the trial's significance beyond just one woman and one officer. Despite intense media coverage, the judge emphasized fairness and impartiality, reminding all involved of the importance of justice, free from bias or spectacle. As the trial unfolded, moments of tension gave way to moments of empathy, officers reflecting on their difficult roles, citizens confronting their own biases, and a community grappling with the complex dynamics of power and responsibility. When the jury finally delivered their verdict, the nation held its breath. Would justice be served? Would this case become a beacon for reform, or a cautionary tale of a system resistant to change? The verdict was announced. Officer Mitchell was found guilty of using excessive force, a rare but powerful statement in a climate where many such cases ended in acquittal or dismissal. The decision ignited celebrations among advocates for police, accountability, but also backlash from some law enforcement supporters who viewed the ruling as unfair. In the wake of the verdict, attention shifted to what came next: reforms promised by the police department and local government aimed at preventing future incidents. Karen's story, once dismissed as a simple retail dispute, had now become a symbol of accountability and the urgent need for change in how police engage with the public. But while the verdict marked a milestone, it was just the beginning of a longer journey. The community watched closely. Would reforms take root or falter under political and institutional pressure? Would Officer Mitchell's conviction signal a new era or remain an exception? As tensions lingered and new policies were drafted, one question haunted everyone. Could true change emerge from a single encounter that had exposed deep fissures in the system? The answer remained uncertain, and the struggle far from over. Following Officer Mitchell's conviction, local government and the police department faced mounting pressure to enact meaningful reforms. The verdict had ignited hope for change among advocates and community members, yet it also exposed entrenched resistance within law enforcement circles wary of increased oversight. City officials convened task forces to evaluate existing police Policies focusing on use of force protocols, de-escalation training, and civilian oversight mechanisms. Recommendations poured in from experts, activists, and residents, calling for transparency, accountability, and rebuilding public trust. One significant reform was the implementation of mandatory body cameras with strict usage policies, ensuring officers documented interactions clearly and completely. The footage from Karen's case had been pivotal in revealing the truth, highlighting the technology's potential to protect both civilians and police. Training programs were revamped to emphasize communication skills and nonviolent conflict resolution. Officers were encouraged to view encounters as opportunities to diffuse tension rather than assert control through force. Community policing initiatives gained renewed support, fostering partnerships between officers and the neighborhoods. They served town halls, workshops, and outreach programs aimed to heal fractured relationships and create shared understanding. However, these efforts were met with skepticism and, at times, outright opposition. Some within the police ranks felt the reforms undermined their authority and complicated their ability to maintain order. Police unions voiced concerns about morale and perceived second-guessing of officers' judgment. For Karen, the reforms represented a bittersweet victory. She hoped her experience would prevent others from enduring similar pain, but she also recognized the challenges ahead. Changing deep-rooted systems required sustained commitment, not just from politicians and police, but from the entire community. Activists continued to organize, demanding that reforms be more than surface changes. They pushed for independent oversight boards with real power, transparent disciplinary processes, and policies addressing racial bias and profiling. The city's police department publicly committed to accountability, but critics warned that words needed to translate into action. Monitoring committees tracked progress, publishing reports that revealed both advances and setbacks. Public sentiment remained divided. Some citizens welcomed the reforms as overdue steps toward justice, while others questioned their effectiveness or feared rising crime rates without strong policing. The media spotlight on Karen's case faded somewhat, yet the ripple effects persisted. The story became a case study in police academies and law enforcement conferences, shaping future training and policy discussions nationwide. Karen herself became an advocate, speaking at community events and collaborating with reform groups. Her journey from entitled complainant to reluctant hero highlighted the complexities of human behavior and the urgent need for empathy on all sides. Behind the scenes, police officers grappled with evolving expectations and the pressures of heightened scrutiny. Some embraced the changes, seeking to rebuild trust and improve their profession. Others resisted, fearing loss of control or unfair judgments. As reform efforts continued, the city faced a choice: embrace transformation with courage and transparency, or revert to old patterns that bred mistrust and division. The tension was palpable and the stakes high. Could meaningful change be sustained beyond headlines and court rulings? Or would the system eventually revert to its familiar, flawed status quo? The answers remained uncertain, and the struggle far from over. Then, in the midst of this fragile moment, a new crisis emerged, threatening to unravel the fragile progress and test the city's commitment to reform. The new crisis that loomed over the city tested every reform, every promise made in the wake of Officer Mitchell's conviction. A high-profile incident involving another officer's questionable use of force reignited old wounds and threatened to undo years of progress. The community's patience was stretched thin, and many feared the fragile trust would shatter. Yet, amidst this turmoil, something different was unfolding. The people who had once been divided by anger and fear began to unite around a shared demand, not just for accountability but for systemic transformation. Neighborhood groups, activists, and even many in law enforcement came together in dialogues that, while difficult, opened pathways toward mutual understanding. Karen, now a vocal advocate for police reform, found herself at the heart of this movement. Her personal journey, from a confrontational bystander to a catalyst for change, became a symbol of how individuals can evolve and influence society. She often spoke candidly about her own flaws and privileges, urging others to confront uncomfortable truths. At the same time, the police department continued to adapt. While resistance remained, ongoing training, transparency initiatives, and community partnerships slowly shifted the culture. More officers recognized that true authority came not from fear or force, but from respect and accountability. The City Council passed legislation requiring independent oversight with subpoena power, greater transparency in disciplinary actions, and expanded community input on policing policies. These reforms, though imperfect and uneven in implementation, marked a historic shift in governance. Yet challenges remained. The legacy of mistrust ran deep, and incidents of misconduct did not disappear overnight. National debates on race, policing, and justice continued to dominate headlines, reflecting a country wrestling with its identity and values. The George Floyd case and Karen's story became part of a larger narrative, one about the ongoing struggle for racial justice and the quest for policing that truly serves and protects all citizens. Schools included these stories in their curriculums. Law enforcement agencies studied them to improve practices, and communities held annual vigils to remember the lives affected by systemic failures. The conversation about police misconduct had changed. What was once dismissed or ignored was now a central issue demanding attention from policymakers, law enforcement leaders, and everyday Americans. For Karen, the journey was far from over. She knew that true reform required vigilance, courage, and empathy from everyone. It was a call to action that transcended headlines and courtrooms, reaching into the very fabric of society. As the city moved forward, it did so with the understanding that justice is not a destination but a continuous process, one built on accountability, healing, and the unwavering hope for a better future. The story of entitlement, power, misconduct, and reform had come full circle. And while the scars of the past remained, so did the promise of change. The question that lingered was no longer whether reform was necessary, but how deep and lasting it could be. And that answer would be written by every citizen who dared to demand justice, and every officer willing to uphold it with integrity.